Okay, welcome to our Masterclass. This is the final of our key science skills, and we're talking about how to keep your scientific poster to 600 words. Now, scientific posters are used by scientists every day at conferences, and this is an example that you can see here of a conference where posters are displayed and the scientists stand and talk as people come and ask them questions. And then from the poster, other people can say, oh, I'd like to read more about your work and read your scientific reports and so on. So it's a really common thing for scientists to do. So we're going to look at the format of the poster, audience and voice. Scientific writing is written in a particular style. It's different to persuasive English writing. You need to be efficient because we've only got 600 words. You also need to be concise for that same reason. And we'll refer back to our BPA example. So this is the required poster format, which we've seen before. So you must use it in Unit 4, but it's a good idea to practice using this for the Year 11 poster in Unit 2. And your teacher might give you the opportunity to do that. If not, you'll come across this in Unit 4. One of the key requirements, and something that's changed with this new study design, is that the poster has a word limit of 600 words. It used to be 1,000 words, and it was hard for students to write concisely with using just 1,000 words, but now it's even more challenging. So I'm trying to give you some tips in this masterclass on how you can actually do that successfully. So when it comes to word counts, though, most schools and universities will accept an extra 10%. So 600, if we add 10%, is 660 words, but aim for 600. We've talked before about pictures and graphs can tell 1,000 words. So where you can, use visuals to reduce the number of words that you need to actually use. And words that are in tables, graphs, reference list, in-text citations, and image captions are not included in the word count. So you'd be surprised how many words this adds up to. So where you can, put things in tables, graphs. You obviously need to include your references, but if you put things into tables and graphs and flowcharts and so on, then those words won't be counted in your limit. So here's a suggested word allocation, and take advice from your teacher. If there's 600 words, the title, you definitely need a title, and it's the research question that ends in a question mark. Try and make that quite concise. So aim for less than 30 words. Obviously, you have to put your name on your work to show that it's yours, so you can't change that. The introduction, which is really important, an important section of the report, aim for up to about 150 words, or a quarter of your number of words. In that, you need to address the hypothesis, the aim, the variables, define keywords, and make sure your theory has got in-text citations, remembering that the in-text citations don't count with your word count. The methodology and methods, retain most of this in your logbook. Just give a summary of the information in your poster. And if you use flowcharts and things, you can reduce this, and we'll look at that a bit later. So suggesting less than 50 words for that section. Same with results. If you use tables and graphs and pictograms and so on, you should be able to reduce your results to less than 50 words. You actually have to have a communication statement, but it's just one sentence. So while it occupies 20 to 25% of your poster, it's just a single sentence. The discussion is one of the most important parts of the report, and it's up to about 400 words, or 2/3 of your poster. And it's the major section because that's where you discuss your results, you can make connection or links with the chemical theory, you say what limitations were of your investigation, what you might do differently next time, any implications. So that's really important, and you do want to use in-text citations which once again aren't included in that word count. The conclusion draws the whole thing together. It actually includes your communication statement, but it connects your research question to your aim and your hypothesis, your general findings. So it's important. You don't want to leave that out. So up to about 150 words. Make sure that it addresses the aim and the hypothesis and is a summary of the findings. The references and acknowledgements aren't included in that word count, but they're important to make sure that you don't plagiarise and you give due acknowledgement of other people's work. But remember that words in tables, graphs, references, in-text citations and image captions are not included in the word count. Next thing, you need to know your audience. Your teacher is the best guide for this. So if your audience is your teacher, you can write according to her. But if your audience is a peer, so another Year 11 student, or the audience is the general public, then you might need to define some key terms. So think about the audience. You do need to define key terms for a non-technical audience. And this would also relate to even a student in Year 11 or 12 who is learning a new part of chemistry. You might be introducing some terms that general chemists might not be aware of, so that would be a place that you would define those. The sections of the poster, this is according to the study design. So the title is the question under investigation, ends in a question mark. The introduction is a brief explanation or reason for undertaking the investigation, includes an aim, a hypothesis, and relevant background concepts, also variables. The methodology and methods sections is a brief outline of the selected methodology, whether it's a case study or it's a simulation or it's a controlled experiment, and a summary of the methods of generating the data or collecting the data, analysing the data are outlined. The results, the presentation of the generated data or evidence in an appropriate format, whether that's a table or a graph or some sort of schematic diagram. A discussion, which we've talked about just recently, conclusion and references and acknowledgements. In scientific writing, we write in what we call third person, in passive voice, and mainly in past tense because it's a report of what has occurred. So when we're talking about third person, if we use this example, in first person we would name someone. So Scott weighed the magnesium, but Scott's name's not relevant, so that's not important. Second person would be saying, Scott didn't do it, you did it. But again, you are not the subject of what's important, it's the magnesium. So instead, in third person, we just get to the crunch of what we're talking about. The magnesium was weighed. It didn't matter if Scott did it or if you did it. And we might just write down that the mass was 11.2 grams. Active voice is often used in non-scientific writing and in descriptive writing. It's often in present tense, whereas we tend to use past tense or more passive. So instead of saying Sophie, which is first person, ate the Mars bar, which is not a scientific thing to say anyway, we might just say the Mars bar was eaten, the magnesium was weighed. Past tense we use for most sections of the report. The introduction, the method, the results, the discussion, and the conclusion. We do use future tense when we're talking about suggested improvements or future directions, because that's something that hasn't occurred yet, so that's okay to be written in the future. Something will be done. Now, we want to be efficient with our space and our word limit, so make the research question the title. You don't need two titles. Use the subheadings that you need to use to actually help structure your report. Put detailed information, just leave that in your logbook because that will still be assessed. Where you can, use tables, dot points, flowcharts, graphs, We'll talk about imperative mood a bit later. And where you can, use chemical symbols like balanced equations and chemical formulas, because again, that simplifies information. For the example, in our BPA study, make the research question the title. So that is it dangerous to drink water from a plastic water bottle that has been left in a warm environment? That's the research question. It's also the title. So it's doing two things. We've got headings throughout the poster, and the detailed results are in the logbook. We're using tables, so a good idea could be for this study to summarise the variables in a table, because the words in a table don't count to the word count. So you could have rows for the independent variable, the dependent variable, and the control variables, for example. The independent variable is what is changed on purpose by the researcher, and that is the type of plastic bottle that's used, but also the temperature that the water was stored. In this BPA investigation, the dependent variable was the concentration of the BPA monomer found in the water, and the controlled variables, we used the same HPL machine, the same stationary phase, the same mobile phase. We use the same volume water bottles as an example. We also use dot points to list things, because making a list is using less words and being more efficient than writing full sentences. We could also put method steps in a flowchart, and an example might be using smart art in PowerPoint. Or some other sort of graphic design to actually show the steps. You could put those in as well. The imperative mood implies that the subject is you. And it means that when you use this phrasing, you start each sentence with an action verb, which is actually an order or an instruction. So it works really well with method steps. So instead of saying using a syringe, which is 3 words, and then we've got put, we could just use the word inject. So 4 words have been replaced by 1. Inject means I'm using a syringe to put. So you could use that, and that saves on words. You can also use balanced equations, chemical formulas such as this skeletal formula for BPA as well. Being concise, really important. And you'll probably find that it's unlikely the first time you draft your poster you'll be under 600 words, unless you've left out a whole section, and you don't want to do that. The centre of the poster, 20 to 25% of the physical space is taken up by the 1-sentence summary. And here we've just left a lot of empty space around it just to make it easier. What should the statement be? It should just be a 1-sentence summary of the major finding and talking to the research question, the aim and the hypothesis. So for example, in our BPA study, it is recommended to store water in BPA-free plastics at temperatures below 30 degrees. That's it. That's the summary of the poster. In order to try and remove words, it often helps to remove prepositions. Now, prepositions are words that are used before nouns or things or pronouns, such as you or I, and they show direction, time, place, or location. But they're often overused, and if you can remove them, you can still often get the same idea across with using fewer words. So some of these include in, on, at, to, of, into, onto, since, during, by, with, for, from, until, inside, over, above, below, near, next to, between, against, ahead of, about, and after. Really common words. So if we have a look at an example, and it's not written that well, but here we've got 42 words apart from the in-text citation, so ignoring that part. Some plastic bottles made of polycarbonate end up leaching the monomer BPA into the water that is placed into the containers, that are hydrolyzed from the polycarbonate material when heated or subjected to pH change or microwaves over a period of time. Pretty verbose. In the poster, what we've got is less than that. We've got 25 words. So we've got, in water-containing products such as drink bottles, BPA is known to leach when hydrolyzed by heat, pH, or microwaves into the water over time. Now, we could potentially revise that further if we just wanted 17 words excluding the in-text citation, because our study didn't look at pH or microwaves. So while that's a valid statement, it's not actually that relevant to this study. So we could say, in water-containing products such as drink bottles, BPA can leach into water when hydrolyzed by heat, and make it quite concise. Where you can, try not to use words by putting actions into nouns. Instead, use bold verbs. So a concrete noun is effortless and better remembered anyway, and they work well with action verbs. So a concrete noun refers to something that we can sort of sense when we describe it. It also helps with persuasion. So an example is, and this is only 3 words, the manufacturer apologised. It's just bang as a statement. An inefficient noun, just saying the same thing but using 5 words, is the manufacturer issued an apology. So we've got this extra issued an, we just sort of added in, and it's not really making any more sense out of the sentence, but just using more words. So an idea for you. Being clear, coherent, and concise, you'll be marked on this. So part of the study point is effective scientific communication. So use short sentences that get to the point. Use consistency of voice. So don't try and change the tone of your voice throughout the document. So keep it in third person, keep it in past tense apart from future implications. Maintain a neutral stance. Remember, this is not subjective. We want to be objective, so avoid subjective language. Use visuals where you can to support your writing and remove the need for writing. Reference related theory, and remember the order of the scientific report has a particular structure. So some examples: non-scientific, persuasive or subjective writing. Talking about Helen's not important. It's the results that are an important thing. So that's more objective. A huge amount of stuff, we might talk about that in verbal language. We just want to get straight to the point. The mass was 24.23 grams. This proved that. We want to avoid that. And we might say the researchers hypothesized if we're talking about someone else's study. Scientific writing is technical, so be careful when you're using absolute language. So if there are exceptions to your statements, then maybe use some qualified language. Absolute examples include things like always, never, will, shall, proven, things that there's no exceptions for. Whereas qualified writing, we might use the words may, might, could, can, possible, probable, likely, appears, tend to, suggests, indicates, supported. So consider some of those words as well. In our BPA example, we summarise the data in graphs and we put all the supplementary data in the logbook. We could even further reduce our one-sentence statement down to 10 words by just taking out "it is recommended to" and just making it the imperative move. Store water in BPA-free plastics at temperatures below 30 degrees Celsius, which is still the outcome of the investigation. I'll say that again. So bringing it all together, if we're writing concisely, first of all, remove prepositions. So if we underline, we've got in, at, and for, of. So if we try and remove these, we've currently got 34 words. when it says, this study found that water stored in plastics containing BPA had higher concentrations of BPA dissolved in the water in contact with the container when stored at 4 degrees, 20 degrees, and 30 degrees for 2 hours. So by removing the prepositions and summarising the temperatures 4, 20, and 30, we just said below 30, we can say it's recommended to store water in BPA-free plastics at temperatures below 30 degrees. So we changed the summaries of the findings to an instruction using the imperative mood, and we're down to 13 words. And by then just making it store water, the imperative tone, start with an action verb, we're down to 10-word statement becomes store water in BPA-free plastics at temperatures below 30 degrees. So in summary, be efficient by including chemical formulas, balanced equations, tables, graphs, and flowcharts. Be purposeful with the tone and language that you use. So use bold verbs, identify and remove unnecessary prepositions. Use absolute words versus qualified words carefully, so use the right context. Where you can, reduce the word count and remove unnecessary prepositions. Okay, so to summarise, here's your overview of your poster. The most important sections are the introduction and the discussion. That's where most of your words should go, with the conclusion. And use some of the other tables and graphs to complete the rest of the information. Good luck with it all.